Here we go. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Recovery Scene. Tonight, I have Arianna with us, and she is going to share her story of hope and recovery. Arianna, I'm really happy that you were willing to come on and share your story with us. Thanks so much.
No, thank you. I appreciate it.
No problem. And so I am going to give you the floor. Take it away.
All right. My name is Arianna. I am an addict. My drug of choice was heroin. I've been clean since March 6, 2020. So just over 3 years or 2 years. I was born and raised here for like 26 out of my 29 years of life. A lot of my family is still here. It's kind of one of the reasons I stay, and also Jamie, you know.
And if you guys don't remember, Jamie, God, what's it been, like a year? She was on our show a year ago. Yeah. She has a hell of a story too. Tell us, you froze just for a second. So tell us again where you're from.
Las Vegas.
Okay, I knew that, but
I was born here. I went to high school here. All my family lives here. A lot of my family went to high school here. But my parents, it's a very Las Vegas story. My mom was a cocktail waitress on the Strip, and my dad was a card dealer. They met at the Riviera, which is a super famous casino here that actually closed down, I want to say like 5-6 years ago. It was really sad. It like got imploded. And but they were both struggling with addiction even before I came. My mom's third child and my dad's third child. So my dad was already really far into his alcohol addiction, and my mom, before I was born, had a really bad coke problem, and then after I was born, she started like getting into meth, and that was one of her many downfalls. I was like, the best part of my childhood was that I didn't realize that my parents were addicts or anything was abnormal with them until I was like 12 years old. When cops kicked in my door and arrested my mom for like something so random. I'm like, what is even happening? It was like one of her friends was like selling stolen computer parts out of our house, and my mom claimed to have no idea. Up until this point, I had believed everything my mom had ever told me without a doubt. After that happened, I got sent to live with my father, who had already moved to Washington at this point. My parents got divorced when I was like 3. So I didn't really see him often. I would just go see him for like summer vacations, spring breaks, that sort of thing. But
did your mom end up going to jail for this?
Yes, my mom had been on probation for trying to cash a forged check, which again, she told me that her fiance went to California to work and he would send her money, and he had sent her a check. She blamed him. I kind of found out later from him that it was not him at all. He had no part in it. It was all my mom. So it kind of felt like everything I knew up until this point was a complete lie. My entire life imploded in 3 days. I went from about to finish 5th grade to being like packing 2 bags and bringing it on a plane to fly to Washington State to live with my dad, who I had never lived with, or I had, but like not that I had remembered.
Right. You didn't have a very strong relationship there.
Yes. I would get the huge boxes of presents for like my birthday and Christmas. But I never spent like long periods of time with him. And when I moved to Washington, that's kind of like when my eyes like really got open to my parents' addictions. Because when I moved to Washington, my stepmom didn't like my mom. And like the older I got, the more that I understood why. My mom put me and my older brother in a lot of risky situations that normal parents who don't struggle with addiction would never even think about.
Right. But when you were younger, you know, it was normal. It wasn't anything strange, you know, because you didn't know any different, pretty much.
Exactly. My mom was always there when I got home from school. She would go to work every night. I had literally every toy I ever wanted. Never went without anything, clothes, shoes, any of it. So to me, it just, I'm the baby. I was spoiled.
Right.
My mom was doing a lot of it out of guilt. And it was a really eye-opening situation being told all of this about my mom, who was my best friend at this point. What? Oh, it's Jamie burst in my room. Go away. You going to get your nails done? All right, love you. Bye. Pain in the ass. But and then while I was living in Washington, I realized how bad my dad's drinking was. He would hide garbage bags of freaking Keystone Ice, and I still can't even smell it like to this day. He would hide like garbage bags of empty beer cans under our house so my stepmom didn't see it. And because he told her so many times, like, oh yeah, I quit drinking. And I knew he was lying, but I'm not going to be the one who told on my dad.
Right.
That's just because my stepmom and I bumped heads for a really long time. And I just like, I always felt like I was like the redheaded stepchild. Like, and
now, did they have kids of their own?
They have my little sister. She had 3 kids from a previous marriage, and then my little sister with my dad. And so I was like the 5th child, essentially, being sent to live there because my mom had an uncontrollable drug problem. So I was just always deemed as like less than. And in my like upbringing, I still have a lot of trauma like related to a lot of the things that I went through. And even now, like I talk to her all the time, and it was a very interesting experience to go from being the baby in my house, spoiled beyond belief, to being treated like I didn't want to leave my room. And it kind of jump started my emo. I was always in all black and hoodies and the blacked out eyes, and my parents just couldn't. My parents never said, oh, it's just a phase. It's just a phase. They were trying so hard to make up for my childhood that they supported me in anything I did, whether it was drugs, whether it was straight A students in high school, straight A's in high school, to modeling, to whatever I wanted to do. I was able to do it. And it was a very cool experience. However, my dad and my stepmom split up like a year after I moved to Washington. And then my dad's drinking got like even worse.
Right.
He and I,
because he doesn't have to hide now.
exactly. Exactly. So my dad owned a biohazardous cleanup company. And in my early emo days, I was obsessed with it. I love like the scary movies and like serial killers and all of that kind of things. And to me, it was, my dad had the coolest job in the world. And he cleaned a house that like a double murder had taken place in. And we moved into it.
Oh, wow.
And like it still had like the bullet, like where one of the people were like shot in the master bedroom, like the carpet was still missing when we moved in. So
jeez.
it was so random, but we lived on an island. We had 3 houses, like it was, and we lived on the beach. So it was weird. But it was also amazing. Like it was probably like my favorite house that I've ever lived in. And from there, like that's where I started drinking.
Now, did you start off like stealing dad stuff?
Yes. I couldn't do the Keystone Light. No. But I remember the first bad thing I think I had ever done in my life up until this point, because I am so smart. I'm like blonde a lot of the times. So I always had like straight A's and honor roll and perfect attendance and et cetera, et cetera. So I was always the good kid. And I think it was, and I started stealing my dad's vodka. And it was like Pop
Off?
Yes. Yes. That was my first dabble into what eventually would become a life of drugs and alcohol. And it like I mixed it with like that powder pink lemonade mix, like so like, and I remember it was so nasty, but and like it tasted like hairspray, and I just kept drinking it, like no questions asked. And it made me feel free. I was always like a super quiet kid. I hated conflict because like I've watched my mom get beat for disagreeing with a guy, like just so I was just taught like don't say anything and nothing bad will happen. So I ended up like internalizing a lot of issues like that I had with my mom being arrested and my life being uprooted, to always being accused of lying by my stepmom, even though I never had. So that was like my first experience into free. So fast forward a few years, I was drinking every weekend. My dad actually bought me like my first weed pipe because he and I would smoke weed together. I would always have parties at my house because my dad wouldn't buy us alcohol, but he would also make sure that all of like me and all of my friends were like okay, and like no one was allowed to like drive drunk or etc. So it wasn't like dad of the year, but how can he yell at me for something that he does every day? Right. Like that was kind of like his mindset. It was, I'm trying to remember. Oh yes. when I was 15, my dad told me that he was moving to Arkansas. And I'm like, hell no.
Well, that's random.
No, no, no. No, no, no. They got bugs. I wasn't.
They got bugs. No, they have bugs.
No.
Come
Nope. No. So my dad talked to my stepmom and she offered me a place to stay. So I wouldn't have to leave Washington, and like my little sister and my dad was my little sister's idol. My sister had always been a daddy's girl. He was so wrapped around her finger to the point I couldn't stand her. I was the baby. No one could touch me. And then this blonde hair, blue eyed child came into the picture, and I hated it. But I couldn't leave her. So I moved in with my stepmom. Everything was great until just one day it wasn't. And she had like a bar in her storage room. So I would just take tiny little bits of all freaking 12 bottles of alcohol. So they would never notice.
Right, just skimming.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I noticed, but they never did. And I fucked up and put water in a Grey Goose bottle that she had in the freezer.
And it froze.
It froze, yeah. Yeah. Yes, it did. And it was the funniest shit, but like looking back on it, it's funny as hell. But at the time, struggling a lot with not being with my mom, and like even though this was 3-4 years later, and there was an attempted suicide, and I'm super glad that it didn't happen, but it's kind of that's the reason I'm back in Las Vegas. My older brother, who was 5 years older than me, he found out about it like a week or two later from my mom. And he was mad as hell. He's like, you need to come back to Vegas. Like, you need to be with your family. Like,
now, were you doing drugs at this time, or was it still alcohol?
No, just alcohol.
Okay.
Occasionally I'd smoke weed if I was feeling spicy, but just alcohol. And that's okay. So I came back to Vegas. It was 2009, and I came back to Vegas, and I was supposed to move with my mom, who that's a whole other story. She met a guy in to Washington to pick me up for spring break. They got arrested with like 25 pounds of weed in the car. Oh, and wow. Yeah. And I'm just like, I don't know if I really want to live with you. So she came to Vegas, and she wasn't my mom. She was my friend at this point. She just bought me alcohol and weed, and like that was kind of it. There was no guidance.
Right.
Which anyone from like the outside looking in could tell I was like on like a really bad path with how I would drink. And so my older sister stepped in, and she took custody of me and prevented me from leaving to go to live in Montana with my mom. And I am still grateful for that. I got enrolled in school here. I missed like 2 months of school in my sophomore year. And in Nevada, if you miss more than like 10 days, you lose credit for the entire semester.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was 16. My sister, the only way she could get me to go to school is if I got like straight A's on things. She would let me get my facial piercings.
Mm.
That's kind of like where it all started. Like I was doing great in school. I was able to finish basically 3 years in high school, or excuse me, 3 years of high school in like a year and a half. Graduated like a 3.8 GPA, compared to like the 1.3 I started with when I moved to Washington, or when I moved back to Las Vegas, because I was hanging out with all the stoners in Washington, and we'd skip school and go smoke weed and drink, and that was what I needed at the time.
Right.
So when I moved here, I was getting straight A's. If I ever wanted to ditch school, I would just call my sister, and she's like, "What's your grade in that class?" And I would tell her, I'm like, "It's an A." She's like, "Can you prove it?" I'm like, "Yeah, for sure." So then she's like, "All right, you can skip school. You can skip class today." I'm like, "All right." And she and I, even now, like to this day, we have such an amazing relationship. I can go to her with any problem, any issue, any random weirdness.
And she took on more of the mom role.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And she's 12 years older than me. So she took custody of my brother after my mom got arrested. She, from 16 to 18, she took care of me she's like I'll get to that in a little bit, actually. So I was just drinking and I started dabbling with like weed and ecstasy. And that was kind of like as far as I went with drugs. Because in my head, I was still like this, not goody two shoes, but like overall good kid.
Right.
My brother, the one that got me out of my head and out of a terrible situation. It was all terrible in my head. Nothing was really bad in Washington. He was killed at the beginning of my senior year in a drunk driving accident.
Oh, wow.
So he was 22 and I was 17, and it's kind of what like really jump started like my downfall. I was drinking almost every day. It was the only time where I didn't have to deal with this super traumatic first, like the closest death that had ever happened to me.
Right.
And it was
he hit by a drunk driver?
No, he was a passenger in a vehicle where the driver was drunk.
Gotcha.
And it sucked. It was terrible. I was so angry at the world, and I took it out on myself, essentially. I was smoking weed every day. There was months at a time where I would do ecstasy every single day because I couldn't mentally process living life without my brother.
Right.
And it was terrible. Then when I was 19, so 2 years later, I met a guy. He was like a really good family friend. Like my mom, like my brother that passed away was actually named after his dad. And he had just gotten out of prison. And I'm like, yep, that's the one I want.
Right. That's a good idea. He sounds good.
And I was able to stop doing ecstasy every day when I was with him. But when I found out that he was messing around with like Percocets and Norcos, I think there's what they call them, something like that. I never really messed with pills up until this point. So when he was doing it, I'm like, oh yeah, like I want to do it.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah. And that was that became everything. We would buy anyone who had them. This was in like 2012. So they were still like largely available. And we were doing pills for like 2.5 years, no problem. And then it escalated from a half of a Percocet to 1 to 1.5 to 2 to 4.
Always does. Yep.
And then I saw him snort a Roxy, and I was like, I hate snorting things, but like let's go, because I was really sick and I didn't want to wait the 45 minutes that it would take for the pill to kick in and like me. So I snorted my first Roxy, and that was great time. I fell in love with everything about it. I was nice to people. I wasn't like this shy, awkward 20-year-old who didn't know how to start conversations. Now I was able to talk to anyone about anything. It like helped in my career, which is weird, but you know, I am an insurance agent. I have been a licensed insurance agent here in Nevada for over 9 years now. And I love it. I get to like nerd out about it all the time. And when I was I think I was like 21. It was in September 2014. My ex and I were spending like $600 a day on Roxy's, because I made good money. He made phenomenal money. And our bills were like, we made like anywhere from like 6 to 10 grand a month, because both of our jobs were commission based. And our bills were like $1,500, like rent, power, all of it. And one day those Roxys just weren't available anymore. We couldn't find anyone who had them.
It always happens. Eventually that always happens. They just run out or they're just nowhere. And that's when the panic sets in, you know?
Real, because at the time I worked for his sister-in-law, or no, I worked for his sister. So we both couldn't be sick. He worked for her husband. So if one of us was sick, she would make one of us go into work. And you know, men, when they get sick, children, straight children, I'd always had to be me. I always had to be the one who went to work dope sick. And I will never forget this day. Like I can even tell you like what I was wearing, because it was such a monumental moment to me when I met my true love. He called me and he's like, I know you're sick and I'm sorry that there's nothing I can do about it, but I cleaned the house. I'm like, bitch, you were dope sick this morning And like, what do you have? Like, how is that possible?
Right. Yeah. Nobody's cleaning the house dope sick.
What? Bad as hell. And I live in Las Vegas. It was September 2014. It's still like 90, 95 degrees, and I'm in a white sweater, like thick sweater, because my chills and sweating was so bad. I just stabbed myself in the eye. I don't know how anyone else didn't see like something is seriously wrong, but it's fine, not a big deal. So I get home and he's like, I have something that's gonna make you feel better, but you're not gonna like it. And I'm like, but it will make me feel better.
Right.
And he's like, absolutely. And that was the first time I smoked heroin. He held it for me. He burned it for me. He's like, all you have to do is follow the smoke with the straw. And I'm like, okay, sounds simple enough. First hit, head over heels in love with this. Never want to be without it. I need this all day, every day for the end of time.
Mm-hmm.
And it took, I think, 2 years before any real issues started happening, like real consequences from our drug use. He would go, like, he would get dope sick one time, like I said, children, and do no call, no shows and get fired all the time. I was always working, because I knew if you're not working and I'm not working, how the hell am I going to get heroin?
Mm-hmm.
And like, that was just the thought of not having it was enough to get my dope sick ass up out of bed every single day. And it was a very interesting experience. He was trying to like go to detox here in Las Vegas. It would never work because he wasn't working. He was able to go to detox, whereas I and support our drug habit. Like, there's no way I can take off 3-5 days to go to detox. So he would go to detox and I would still be at home using.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, terrible situation. So it got to the point where he had to go to California. He was on probation the whole time we were doing drugs. I just don't understand like how he never got caught. And it was just crazy to me. But then it was November 2016. He flew to California for a month. Or no, 3 months. He agreed to a 3-month program. 7 days after he left, my mom died.
Oh, wow.
So it was terrible. I was completely alone dealing with this because my mom and my ex were the only two people who knew about my drug problem. Like, everyone and my mom knew about so well that no one else knew. So to me, my entire world came crashing down. I told my mom about my drug use 2 days before she died, because everyone was like, well, like, they were always asking questions about like, are you sure you're not on drugs? And I'm like, no, yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm not on drugs, even though I'm nodding out everywhere. It was just terrible timing. And when my mom died, I was completely mentally unstable. My fiance at the time was gone and he couldn't come back.
Right.
Um,
And it's not like you can just go to your sister with this, you know? Yeah. The one
exactly.
person that you could talk to is now gone.
I had to be the one to call my sister to tell her. And again, I still remember that phone call just as clear as I remember the one about my brother. And I snapped. I would go to work for like an hour. My drug dealer would call me and say, "Hey, do you want to make a gram?" And I'm like, "Sure, what do I got to do?" He's like, "I just need to go to 3 places." You know, drug dealer time, that takes forever. Forever.
Mhm.
So I would be gone 4, 5, 6 hours out of my workday. Sometimes I wouldn't even go back to work because he needed to deliver and I needed drugs. So that was like the start of the end for me. Was when my mom died, and that was in November 2016. And I was like, I met drug dealers off Google because I would get paid in the middle of the night and need drugs in the middle of the night. And in Las Vegas, I don't know if this is everywhere, but a lot of the heroin dealers close at 7, 8 o'clock at night. I would put myself into terrible, risky situations and not care at all. The 2 people I loved in the world the most were gone. So it was like, whatever. And I, like 2 months after she died, I crashed my car. I was so mad because I was going to meet my dealer and I was dope sick. And I looked down at my phone because it was close to closing time. And I almost hit a median on the freeway on an overpass. To this day, I still don't understand how I didn't crash, like how I walked away from that. It was 5 o'clock during rush hour traffic, and I fishtailed. I did a complete 360. I know it was a 180. I did a 180 because I was slammed into the median on the other side of the overpass, facing oncoming traffic. And where I landed was like right when the shoulder opened. So no one hit me and I didn't hit anyone.
Oh, wow. That was lucky.
I know. So I called one of my friends. I'm like, "Hey, I just got into a car accident." They're like, "Well, I'll come get you." So I had my drug dealer meet me at his house, and then I got high in the bathroom, and then he took me home. And when my ex's dad found out that I crashed my car, he immediately thought that I like nodded out, and I crashed because I was on drugs, and it was terrible, even though that wasn't what happened. So he's like, "All right, you got 2 choices." I'm like, "Okay." He's like, "You can go to detox or you have to find somewhere else to live because you can't live with me." I'm like, fuck. All right. So I go to detox in Orange County, California. I went to a rehab in Beverly Hills. Everything was great. And that was the first time I ever tried to get clean. It like the whole time I was in California, my ex and I were fighting. We were super toxic together. like we were very submissive to each other when we were on drugs. Like we let a lot of shit go. So when we were clean, he wouldn't take any of my shit, and he would bring up a lot of things that I did in addiction. And I just didn't care. I'm like, what the fuck you want me to do about something that happened 2 years ago? You forgave me then, and now you're bringing it up again.
Mhm.
And fighting and breaking up, we probably broke up 100 times easy in like this 1 month span. And my dad was the first person I called when I was in California. A few months or a few weeks before I went to California, my dad called my aunt to have like a mini intervention. And my aunt called me over to her house. Freaking intervention. I was pissed. I was so mad. Like, you lied to me about food to get me over here, and now I don't even get food. I'm being accused of being on drugs. Like, are you serious? Even though I smoked a half a gram of heroin on my way there.
Right, but you're all self-righteous. Like, well, wait a minute.
Audacity, like I couldn't believe it. And even though they had everything but literal screenshots, like they had proof up the yin yang, and I denied all of it. It was insane. So when I was able, like, I went through like the whole 7 or 10 day blackout period where you can't call anyone. And the first person I called when I was off that blackout period was my dad. And he was so happy, because even though he and I didn't have like a very good relationship after a lot, like, because he was extremely abusive verbally, was expected to be his daughter, girlfriend, and his mom all at the same time. And at 12 years old, that can put like a lot of emotional damage on someone. And so when he moved to Arkansas, I would talk to him maybe once a year if I was feeling generous. And so he knew about all of the fighting that me and my ex were doing. And when I was ready to leave rehab, he said, if I pay for you to come out to spend time with me, will you come? I'm like, yes, but you have to purchase my ticket back home. He said, okay. So I went to his house and I spent a week there, and it was amazing. Like, he supported my sobriety probably more than I did. He would take me to tiny little town in Arkansas. You had to go to the next town over. They did one meeting a week. And he went to it with me, even though he was still drunk, because he knew it meant a lot to me.
Mm-hmm.
And that week was the last time I ever saw him. He died like 6 months later.
Mm.
So in that week, we were able to repair 8 years of a terrible relationship. So I relapsed probably like 2 or 3 days before he died. And by me, what I mean when I say I relapsed, my ex relapsed, and I found it, and I was like, ooh, what the hell's the point? Mm-hmm. So I started using again, and then I used my dad's death as a justification for my relapse, even though I had relapsed before he died. And that one took me out for probably like another year and a half. My first run was at 2.5 years. My second one was a year and a half. Like it was just getting so much worse, so much quicker. And I had been to NA meetings. I hated it. I was more triggered to use when I left that meeting than when I walked into it. And when I had relapsed, I had like 7.5 months clean. Never gone through the steps, never had a sponsor, never did any of that because I'm not really an addict. I just have a heroin problem. You know, that's how I saw myself. And same fucking shit happened. We ended up homeless and living in a park. He got arrested because he absconded from parole and probation. And I'm by myself. So another ultimatum was put at me by his dad. He's like, all right, if you move or if you want to move in, you have to go to detox. I'm like, all right, but you're going to let me pick up before I leave. He's like, okay. He didn't want to, but he knew.
Right.
I'm not going to go into detox sick. So I do like half my drugs and then I swallow the other half. And I'm at detox for like 3 hours and they tell me they don't give withdrawal meds. And I said, okay, nope, peace out. This is my, I gotta go. And I went out again and it lasted probably like a week of not having him with me. We would like when I say he would work at car washes and I would just kind of like be there and like he would help wash people's cars for tips and we made like $150 to $200 a day just on that, which was enough to support our habit. We didn't care about the bills, we didn't care about rent, any of that. Without him, I didn't know how to make money like that. So I went to detox. This is the true beginning of my end of drugs. I called my sister and I told her, I'm like, I can't do it anymore. She's like, it's about damn time. Shit. And she's like, all right, you can come spend the night here tonight, but you have to go to detox in the morning. I'm like, okay. So I go and I tell her, like, I am going to get high one last time before I go to detox. She tried to talk me out of it, This whole time, like, I've just been smoking heroin. Like, I hadn't started shooting yet. And everything was great. I went to detox, had so much fun until like a month later when I graduated the rehab and I started drinking because I'm a heroin addict. I don't have a problem with alcohol. And I was like not even 3 months clean and pregnant now.
Oh, wow.
My third, it was a super weird like Tinder tequila experience. And that's just okay. I made it to 6 months clean and then my ex came back. We had broken up while I was getting clean. And the day I saw him again was the day we relapsed. He called me.
You're still pregnant at this point?
Yes, still pregnant. In like I knew I was like 4 months pregnant or 3.5, 4 months pregnant. And I knew I didn't want my daughter. I didn't even know she was a daughter yet. Like I didn't want to be a mom. That means I can't do drugs. No, No. And I relapsed and I used the remaining 5 months I was pregnant every day. And my sister, she knew, but she didn't know how to talk to me about it. She's like, if you're using when the baby is born, they're gonna take her away from you. And again, at the time, I knew that was an extreme possibility. I just did not care.
Right.
In my head, I knew I didn't want my daughter. I didn't want to be a mom. I wanted none of this. But I couldn't afford an abortion because that meant less money for drugs. No. So in my head, it made more sense to try to hope for a miscarriage than to just spend the money to have an abortion. And my daughter was born January 31st, 2020. And as soon as I saw her, it was a wrap. I'm like, no, drugs are cool, but I instantly fell in love more so than I did when I fell in love with heroin. So it was like a huge pivotal eye-opening moment in my life. So of course she starts withdrawing from opiates while I'm having my ex meet our dealer downstairs and bring me up heroin, and I was shooting it up in the bathroom because that's like, yes, I wanted to be her mom, but at the same time I didn't really want to stop doing drugs.
Right.
And a few days later I get released from the hospital, and CPS comes, and the day after she was born, even though he wanted to be the one to raise her with me, excuse me, and he left the day after she was born to go back to California to that same rehab he went to before. And it was terrible. Like, again, I'm without him. Again, I'm dealing with life-altering situations and scenarios by myself. Like, why the fuck do I even need you then? And I had to go, hold on. I went to my first appointment with CPS, my first meeting, and I told them, yes, I am on drugs. It is not that fucking hard to tell. They're like, okay. So my daughter was in the NICU for a month coming off of heroin. And like, I had gone to detox a few days after my first CPS interrogation type thing. And I come out of detox and I call my case manager and I'm like, I'm home. And I am so grateful she served me with the warrant removing her from my custody. I'm like, fuck, I really fucked up. And I only had like a few days clean, but when she brought me that warrant, it was bone crushing. No, not bone crushing, soul crushing. And I called my dealer before my CPS caseworker even hit the end of our block. And I went out for a few more weeks. I got arrested. And I actually got arrested for prostitution. And I was in jail for the first time, 26 years old. I just had a baby a month and a half ago, and I'm detoxing in jail. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? What am I doing with my life? I am a mother to a newborn baby. What the fuck, right? And I'm like, I will never do this again. I will never detox in jail. So I got out of jail and I got really high I went to detox. And I have been clean since. And the last 2 years, I went from having an alleged no contact order with my daughter. I only got to see her twice a week on video chats.
Mm.
And
How long did you have to do that for?
the no contact order was 4 months. 4 months. So my daughter is like 6.5 months before I actually get to like really see her in person outside of a doctor's appointment. And it's crazy. Like my CPS caseworker hated me, absolutely hated me. She was from a country where drug addicts are like the worst of the worst, especially like to do that to a baby. And she got COVID, and it was the best thing that ever happened. I complained about lack of communication with her to my lawyer, to her supervisor. No one was listening. And after a month of not hearing from her, my lawyer flips out, calls her supervisor, and immediately gets my case reassigned. The woman who took over my case is an absolute godsend. I still talk to her even now. My CPS case has been closed for almost a year, and she fought for me because she knew I was doing everything I was supposed to. So it got to a point so she told me that my previous caseworker lied to me. I never had a no contact order. I met her my case got assigned to her Wednesday. I met her Thursday. I had my first supervised visitation with my daughter on Tuesday. So she was getting shit done. And I did supervised visits for 2 hours a day, once a week for 5 weeks. And then it went to unsupervised, and I'd get her for 4 hours a week at my house. And then it went to 8 and 12. And then I would get overnights with her. And 2 weeks before I got my first overnight, I hit 9 months clean. And I Jamie, the anti-shark, she commented on one of my TikToks and was like, "Hey, I live in Vegas. If you ever want to go to a meeting, just let me know." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay." Freaking weirdo from the internet wants to go to a meeting with me? No, thank you. But a few weeks later, I reached out because I was starting my old relapse behavior. And I couldn't do it. I could not relapse. And she took me to my first meeting. I had 9 months of sobriety, 0 days of recovery. And I was white knuckling it so hard that it almost snapped. And that was when my life changed forever. 2 weeks later, I got my first overnight, and she got to meet my daughter at a meeting, and it was beautiful. It was great. It was so much fun. And after 355 days of not having custody of my daughter, I was given physical custody back. And it was a week after her first birthday. So yes, even going into the CPS case, I'm like, all right, if I really want to do this, I have to sacrifice however long it takes of her baby years so I can be around long term. Because the way that I do drugs, I was surprised I made it to 26. And if I would have kept going, my sister tells me this every day. She's like, I would have had to bury our brother, my mom. I refuse to bury you. And it was a very interesting experience, like going through CPS, and it was hard. It was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, but also one of the best and most rewarding things I've ever done. A few months after I got physical custody back, I was granted legal sole custody of my daughter. And that was April 2021. I have had her every day for a year and a half. That is the love of my life. She's silly and she's goofy and she's smart. But I strongly believe that I would not be here if it wasn't for her. And she goes to meetings with me. She sees me when I go to meetings, like give hugs to everyone. So she thinks that she can, even when we're not at meetings.
And she's cute. I see the posts of her that you put on Facebook and everything. And that's really awesome. That's really awesome. Your story is a powerful one, and it's one that, it's definitely going to reach some people. And I just, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you being so raw and, just willing to share these things, because a lot of people don't. And, there's the cliche that says secrets keep us sick. And yep, the more you put it out there, you're not just helping other people, but we help ourselves, when we do this. Now, I know you're on TikTok, so where can people find you on social media if they want to connect?
TikTok is kind of like the one I'm most open on. My handle, what the hell is that even called?
I think so.
I don't know. My name is
yeah.
Arianna Shark, because I am a part of the shark family, the shark recovery family. You can always reach out to the Auntie Shark. Love her. She's freaking psychotic.
Yeah, and you can see Jamie's video is on here. You just have to scroll back through probably, I think, about a year. God, it's been a long time, but
I understand.
Yeah. So thanks again. We're really glad that you could come on and just do this with us. So everybody knows how this part goes.
Thanks for having me.
You are so welcome. That's going to do it for this episode of the Recovery Scene. So remember, addiction isn't pretty, but recovery is beautiful, and we'll see you next time.